I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Today in the podcast, we have Liz Diaz. Liz is a holistic and spiritual life coach. She also leads incredible ecstatic dance circles. She began her career as a social worker and a counselor. In 2011, Liz had her second spiritual awakening, and it's that experience that led her to find free-formed intuitive dance, a gateway to come back home to her body and to herself. For the last 9 years, she has been working with women and creating spaces that inspire them to cultivate embodied awareness and connection to the divine within. Liz and I met a few years ago now at this beautiful center for female entrepreneurs, and we just connected. And Liz, I'm very just happy to have you here for who you are. And I'm also just really excited to share this conversation with people because I know there was a time in my life where I was so disconnected from my body, and in fact, destructive with it, trying to numb it out, totally not connected to the wisdom. And I have to imagine a lot of people feel that way. So I'm excited for you to share your journey, for us to talk about our bodies. And I know that you also have some real wisdom for, places that people can start. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. I love you and you're amazing. And I'm so happy to be having this conversation with you and your community because I feel there'll be a real resonance with the extension of intention and how we can be intentional with our bodies as well. So yeah, I'm excited to hop in and dive in. And the piece that you mentioned about disconnection of the body, it's something that's so prevalent right now in our community, especially with COVID and doing home office and being on our devices more than ever. And there's a real challenge here for us to take a pause, to take a break, to come back to our bodies and start to listen. So maybe we can start there. Maybe we can start talking about why we disconnect from our body.
I would love to do that. And in doing that, I also want to start with your beginning, so with the disconnection, and I don't know your whole story. So I'm imagining that there was some disconnection and reconnection in your awakening. So I'm curious to also start from your personal journey. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, we could totally start there. There's many spots of awakening or I guess a call to or a return to the divine that has happened in my life. And I would say that really there's two really big instances that happened and that made me question the greater piece, right? Not just the 9 to 5. I was doing social work and counseling at the time, but felt really lost. I was having chronic illness. I was sick all the time. I was about 15 to 20 pounds overweight. I was depressed, even though I didn't know it at the time. Was in an unhealthy relationship. Very toxic relationship with my partner at the time, and knew there was something more, and I just didn't know what it was. And I found Kundalini yoga at a YMCA.
I love it.
And it was the closing chant in addition to the kriyas, the movement and the breathing and everything that just started to really plant a seed for me, that there was something more And that was sort of my first taste of connection to my higher self, even though I'd always been very heart-centered, volunteering from a very young age in marginalized communities, and also coming from, um, a single parent, new immigrant, single mom, always been open to supporting people. So that wasn't new for me, but what was new was this deeper connection. Even though I went to like a Catholic school and I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and there had just been almost a separation from my direct connection to the divine. So that was sort of my first taste, was sort of through Kundalini yoga, and then that led me to meditation. But then the body piece came much later. I would say came about 4 years after my first awakening, and it was every time I say this, tell people about this experience, I have to share a disclaimer. Um, One, that I wasn't on any sort of psychedelics, because people were like, "Oh,
Gotcha.
it's so real," that people are like, "You were on something," and I wasn't. So I'd been traveling. I shifted from doing social work, and I um, was exploring doing interpretations and translations, and I was traveling for work, and I got hired to go down to Mexico and to do some translations, and anyways, so I was found myself there, um, and an elder that I knew from Toronto, from the Guatemalan Mayan community, he said to me, he was traveling down there as well. He said to me, "I'm going to be offering a workshop in Puerto Morelos," and I had been at the time in Oaxaca, Mexico, so it's quite a journey to get to near Cancun, but I'd never seen the Caribbean, so I was like, "Okay, well, I'm done my work contract. I've got some time, so let me go. I'm here. I've never been, so let me go." And he was doing this workshop on traditional healing and the Mayan calendar. And anyways, it was at this beautiful property that this woman, Hirusha, who I'll tell you that other part of the story maybe a little bit later, but she was so welcoming, and she had a lovely community there. And so during my travel to this part of Mexico, I ended up losing my wallet and my passport.
Oh my God. It's my worst
So
nightmare.
right.
Yeah.
And so I get there, but I didn't realize that I had lost it until the day after that I arrived to the hostel. And that night that I arrived, I went to see Tata's talk. And then I made it back to the hotel, and I realized, oh, I lost my wallet, and I didn't have any credit cards. I didn't have, like, I had like a little bit of money in my pocket, but didn't have anything. So I ended up walking back to the property where they had done this talk, and spoke to Hirusha, who I had just met like a couple hours ago, and said, "Hey, can I stay here until I get money and a new passport issued?" Like, I thought it was going to be a couple weeks, or 10 days. And she was like, "Yeah, no problem. You can stay." And she had an intentional community of 3 other women that were staying with her. And she was teaching them how to be Mayan priestesses, and prayer rituals, and prayers to the ocean, and just, you can imagine. And I was had no idea of this world.
Hmm.
Um, so during my time there, they had a fire ceremony, and a fire ceremony is, I'm going to say this in very simplistic terms, and so I apologize if I offend anyone, but it's kind of like a big bonfire, but there's an intentionality around it, and it was on a full moon, and so the intention was to release. And we also had a cacao ceremony, which was just straight chocolate, nothing in the chocolate. And during this time, there had been some African drummers that had come to visit her because it was like a hot spot of people traveling through, and they were drumming, and it'd been the fire, and they were drumming, and we'd had some cacao, and I was kind of swaying and shaking and moving around to the African drums, and all of a sudden I felt like a swooshing of energy just through my spine, and it was like a rapture where at one point I was having this conversation with my head saying, I can't let go because if I let go, I don't know if I can come back. And the drumming got more and more intense. And I guess I let go because I don't remember anything like logical beyond that point besides feeling um so much light, so much like a vibration. It's just really hard to describe because it was an out of body, in body experience, where I felt a deep sense of oneness, and peace within myself. And and I don't know how long that lasted for. And I just remember Hirusha, who is this Mayan medicine woman, um, I remember feeling her presence and her coming beside me, starting to talk to me, starting to bring me back from this sort of rapture, because that's really all that I can describe it as, is a rapture, sort of slowly bringing me back. And the drumming had subsided, and I sort of came back to slowly, and I realized that no one else had been like moving but me. And it was in retrospect, and this happened in 2012, so it's been a number of years. I realized this was a sort of a communion with the divine, however you identify the divine to be. For me, it was a communion with, um, a direct communication with the divine through my body, something that I had never experienced before. I mean, I'd had some experiences of direct communication, but none that were directly enabled through the shaking and through the drumming. And that brought so much release, because at one point, I just remember touching my face, and my face had been like, was wet, and I assumed that I had been weeping. And what I heard from other people that were there was that I was making like vocalizing as well, and just shaking, quite vigorously. And now that I've, my journey has taken me into dance movement therapy and looking at, Quakers and Shakers, and how this was actually some, not just me, but there has been forms of communication where people would intentionally shake to get into a trance to receive messages from the divine. We've seen this in different African cultures. We've seen this in the Shakers and the Quakers. We also see this this evolution of it in some gospel traditions in the U.S. that use dance as a way to invoke. So yeah, that was my first experience with the divine through movement and through my body.
Did you feel scared?
At first, when I was first starting to shake, and I realized that I couldn't stop the shaking,
Mhm.
I was scared, and I had like, because there was this higher voice that was saying to me like, let go,
Yeah.
let go, let go. And I was like, I don't want to let go. Like, I don't want to let go. But that's what I think is the daily surrender, right? I think
Yes.
that's a big part of the practice, is being intentional people, is a surrender. And at one point, the shaking got so intense that I couldn't not prevent myself from letting go. And that's where I don't remember, like, logically at my head, like, what happened. Yeah. Yeah, of course I was scared, but I think a lot of us are scared, um, when we're faced with, uh, that ego, right? That ego having to die.
Yeah, it wants to hang on,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like, why don't you stay right here? So I'm curious then, because yeah, you do these incredible dance circles. So how has that, become a personal practice for you? And I'm really curious for you. My question too is, when you're creating this, like I know you put the music together and obviously you're choreographing for lack of a better term, but what are you really creating? Like, and how does that all come together?
So for me, I these women's dance circles, and they've shifted from sort of these conscious dance parties that I used to host in Toronto where we had like a few hundred people coming. They really birthed from the space of wanting to give others a way to commune with the divine through their body. And I know we have different practices, like meditation's a practice, yoga is a practice, but sometimes those ways are a bit rigid in terms of structure. Um, of okay, you have to do these poses, or you have to do this breath to access this connection. And for me, I wanted to create a ritual, a ceremony where something that's so ancient and profound as healing through movement and healing through dance, because it's not choreographed. The movement that people do is free formed and it's intuitive. It comes from inside of them. It's I don't direct the movement. And dance is one of the most ancient forms of healing that we know of. You know, and it's something that has also been done in community to heal, to pray, to ask for rain, to ask for to celebrate a birth, to celebrate a death, you know. And so I think what I was searching for in my own life was more reverence, and I wasn't finding it in the communities that I was involved in. There was a large ecstatic dance community in Toronto, and also an expressive arts community in Toronto, but it was missing the spiritual element. And so the curation for these events is is holistic in the sense that I'm always thinking of how can I support someone's healing at the mind, body, spirit level? And that incorporates the emotions as well. And so I did a lot of I've been doing this for almost 9 years, so there's a lot of trial and error at the beginning. But the music that I choose is world music. So it's world infused music, anything from African to Pan Asian to anything that you can think of that really brings somebody into their body and not to their head. So I don't use a lot of music with English language in it. And the intention is for you to come as you are and to move what arises. Gabrielle Roth is a really big inspiration for me. She's the founder and creator of Five Rhythms, and so is dance movement therapy, where the foundations is for both is one, we have self-healing capacity, and two, we can use our creative imagination and our body as an extension of our intention. So if you arrive to a dance circle with the intention of releasing, I don't know, or moving through grief, for example. That's the intention that you're arriving with. And so you're arriving to sacred container, and that intention is your prayer, and your movement is your prayer. And so I'm solely providing the container. And I'm trusting that you as a participant, your highest self is also guiding you in what needs to happen. So your movement might be slow, it might be jagged, it might be intense, it might be anything in between. And the music, the way that I curate the music, is done in a way that takes you on a journey to go through a bunch of emotions, to sort of start slow, it picks up to peak and then comes back down, to create a container that release can happen, but also you can be nourished. Yeah, so that's kind of hard to
I
explain.
know, but you did a really good job. And you did a great job. And, as you're talking, I hear one thing coming through, so you can tell me if you agree. And then there's something personal I want to share, but I also just, I love your use of the word reverence. And I do think some of our spiritual practices, when I'm talking to people about them, I can see their brows furrow. And it was like, like let's infuse this with some joy, and that's with the
Totally.
dance. Like I see it as like, even if we're grieving, like, but celebrating our emotions and the process in our bodies, like it just feels
100%.
like this great, and I think we're here to celebrate, right?
Completely. And that's initially why when I started doing these events, they were called conscious dance parties. And it was a very simple term. I couldn't think of a name. It was and so I just like, this is what I'm gonna name it. And there is a celebration that happens when we collectively come together to celebrate. And I know right now with COVID, it's challenging to come together, but we can still do this virtually. There's still the energy that gets transferred. And I remember when I used to DJ these events and putting on like the track would come on that would go from being the tribal music, and everyone all of a sudden starts to pulsate in the same way, like these undulations of people pulsating like a sea. The first time I witnessed that, I was so in awe of the primordial component that lives within us, and the primordial component that is also so connected. And then shifting from that track to a track that was a bit more house and trancey and like really like disco-y, and really like pushing that joy factor of like breaking through the pain and breaking through the lived experience into awe and into transcendence, and people's faces like really reaching that ecstasy, and people laughing and moving around the room, and hands up, and just really feeling that awe in the form of joy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. And you just kind of led to the other thing that I wanted to say. And I don't know how to say it. I don't think there's an eloquent way to say this, but my addiction is always, it's something that I'm thinking about on a daily basis, And so when we
Mhm.
talk about dance, like I just think of my experience, and I think it's probably lots of people's, where, I used to need liquid courage. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
was so self conscious, so disconnected from my body. And I'm not a great dancer to start with. So now, like dancing to me just does feel like joy. And I don't care what it looks like. And I'm the first one on the dance floor. Like I just love it, and I just
Yeah.
feel it. And it just doesn't matter, and it's just such
Yeah.
a different experience. And when I've been in like mindful dance environments, like the way people just, authentically move their body naturally is just so beautiful, and so much more beautiful than, some drunken, messed up
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
really experiencing the freedom and joy of this that just like comes out of like the deepest part of us.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that everyone is arriving with their own intention, and we're doing this process together, but everyone is on their own journey, and so it takes away the outward focus of what is that other person doing, how are they moving, and yeah, I think at first it can be a bit challenging to get out of the head and come into the body, but that's where it becomes a practice, right?
Mhm.
That's where this is a moving practice. This is a moving practice for you to connect to you, to come home to yourself. I really see the body as a temple. And so um, how do we come back in? And, we do that through intention. We do that through being mindful of our breath. We do that through being mindful of, okay, let me tune in. How does my body want to move? Right. And really asking that question. And that's sort of where my practice has moved to, or moved back to, is doing Dance Temple, which is these women's monthly dance circles that I hold. And it still has a similar format of the music, but there's a certain quality to it that becomes more of a practice, and which is where the embodied listening comes in. So embodied listening is a tool, a key, a gateway to accessing more wisdom, more information. So something as simple as noticing your breath, then shifting to noticing, okay, how does my body want to move right now? And then letting your body move. If you're thinking too much about it, you're probably not letting your body move. I think this is where curiosity comes in and playfulness comes in. This is where my practice in dance movement therapy and expressive arts really asks myself and participants to, okay, how can I play here? How can I let myself explore? How can I let my body lead? So it's not, how does this look? But it's more, how does this feel? How does it feel to me when I move my hips? Oh, that feels really juicy. Let me keep doing that. Oh, you know what? I didn't realize I was so upset about that phone conversation I had with my mom today. The stomping feels really good. Let me keep stomping. So it's really a way to access emotions and process um, some of the stuff that we have hidden underneath the surface, like in our subconscious, that we can't access at the mind. We can only access at the body level.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Like, and then kind of like where we started all of this. So, if our body is a temple and the temple is in the middle of a pandemic and stressed out, and maybe like in your case, dealing with chronic pain, what do we do?
Yeah. So it's
I know that's a very
interesting.
loaded
Yeah, no,
question.
it's okay. And I was just like, where do I start? And I'm I'm someone who's recovering or living with a traumatic brain injury, and so I've had 2 concussions in the last 2 years, and also navigate chronic pain and chronic fatigue, and um, just as you mentioned about you thinking about or living with recovery. For me, it's, how am I in my body? How can I be in my body when there's suffering?
Mhm.
Um, and this is where the embodied listening comes back in, and developing a friendship and a conversation with our body on a regular basis. And sometimes when I say that to people, I'm like, are you friends with your body? When I say that to some of my clients, and they're just taken aback.
What do they say?
Um, I suppress how my body feels. I'm scared to hear what my body's feeling because when I listen to it, it's screaming at me,
Mhm.
is what I hear the
Yeah.
most often. And the screaming is because we're not listening.
I
And
used to
I
feel that
always
way for sure, like horrible
right,
anxiety, panic attacks, numb it
right.
all out, and, I mean,
Yeah,
vomiting, like the
with
word, like I was just like, my body is in a complete rebellion, and I'm just telling it to
totally.
shut up.
Yeah, totally. And so we suppress, we push down, we lock it up, and then this extreme, but then it shows up as illness or shows up as um a reoccurring call for help. The scream is when it's gotten so bad that the everything that the body is trying to do to get your attention isn't working. So then it becomes this really loud, incessant pain to get you to pay attention. And so I invite people that I work with to start to build a relationship with the body. And that comes through meditation usually. And by asking, what do you need from me today? Something so simple like, what can I do for you today? What do you need from me in this moment? And it might be, I just need a glass of water. It might be, I want to eat blueberries,
Yeah.
and then that dialogue starts to be more present. And then you can go a little deeper when it feels safer to connect to the body.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
just hear, like, such a kindness in that, right? Like, just,
Mhm.
your shoulders drop, like, there's a softness in it, and it's also like, "Let's be friend like, we're gonna be on the same side, like, what do you need? What can I do? Like, let's just figure this out."
Yeah, which is where the bigger wisdom comes in is so for right now we're going through these moments of uncertainty with the pandemic, and we're sitting at our desks a bit more, or a lot more, we're not moving as much. And so our this is where our conversation with the body needs to be actually stronger. Um, so it might be that you, in addition to doing your intentional morning practice, you play your favorite song and you bounce about your dining room or in your bedroom or in your washroom if you live with like a bunch of people and you want to just have a space for yourself. You could do that. And what starts to happen is that there starts to be a feedback. Your body starts to feel more relaxed. We get those happy hormones going in our body, and we feel more calm, and we see potentially more possibility, right? Because we're not stuck in our little square of just of our head, And so movement is a gateway to possibility as well, which is something that I think is really important. Is that it opens up the mind to because you're not in your mind, you're in your body. And then when you come back, you feel refreshed, you feel, okay, you know what, I can handle this, I can do this, and your body's supporting you.
Yeah.
It's not working against you.
It is so interesting, like, when I hear you say that, it just reminds me, like, I was always searching for this calm and this peace, and it took many, many years, but now that I feel, not to say that I never feel stress, because I definitely do, but I
Mhm.
feel like I cope with it in better ways. But when my body's at peace, like, my mind is so much more relaxed, and I actually feel like I just think way less than I used to.
Yeah.
Like, I can just,
Yeah.
like, that busy chatter's just not there. Like, sometimes I'm just not thinking, and I'm like, I really love this.
Yeah. Yeah. And the piece about navigating pain and um do what you can. The body, if you move, sometimes what I found in my own experience, and this is going to be different for each person, sometimes the resistance or the projection that I'm going to feel more pain afterwards is actually not true. So I start moving, and I can't move the same way that I used to, pre-concussions and, um, inner ear issues. Like, I just can't move the same way. But I still find a lot of joy in flowing and moving slow, and it's so nourishing, and it still gives me the same, um, benefits that I got before. It's just different. And that different is being directed from my body. It's not being directed from my head. And so I'm asking my body, how would you like to move today? It's like talking to your inner child almost. It's talking to someone who um, you care for, and the body will guide you in the way that it needs to and wants to.
I love that. And what I hear you saying, is we can, jump to judgment or criticism of just how you described maybe your body or anyone's body's not moving the way it was. And instead of having that be our default setting, I hear you say, like, really meeting ourselves in this moment and just being like, what's available here? What do we need? What can we do? And that being in the moment is just so huge.
I think that's what takes us back to intentionality and being in the present moment. And the same, we can apply this in every way. So if we have um, a challenging situation that happens that makes us feel a certain emotion, we can come back to the body and just check in and see how we're breathing. Our breathing really kind of is a guide to let us know how we're feeling. So if we're breathing like we're not breathing, okay, I'm clearly upset about something, or I'm breathing heavy, I must be like scared. So what can I do? How can I be more here? And we can do that through our breath. So being conscious about our breathing, and then checking in and saying, okay, what do I need now? Right? It's really a practice of coming back home to ourselves. This is another way that we can tune in, moving mindfully.
Yeah. So I'm just curious
Mhm.
because you know what? When I did this podcast last year, so many people said, I was like, how do you ground? Or it just came up in so many ways. It always came
Right.
back to, not always, but many times, a significant amount of times, breath work was mentioned.
Yeah.
And I remember a time when I was seeing a counselor and she was totally distracted. She was terrible, but she was like,
Oh,
the
no.
breath work. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, I was like, I just don't understand. Like, I'm breathing. I don't understand how to do this. So, like, for somebody who's in that mindset, like, if I notice my breath is like I'm holding my breath, my big thing was holding my breath,
Yeah.
or you said it like it's shallow breathing. How can people, like, what is a breathing technique or something to be mindful of that really gets you grounded in your breath in a healthy way?
Yeah. I'm sorry about your counselor. As a trained counselor, I'm sorry that you had a horrible counselor.
It was just a one-off. I've had many excellent ones, but yeah, she
Okay.
just like terrible. So I was like, okay, reroute.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is two simple things that we can do is find our feet, and imagine that we're breathing all the way down into our feet and feeling that connection to the floor. That's especially if you're feeling disassociated from your body, feel really out of it. I do that one a lot. And another simple thing that you can do is bring both of your hands to meet your body. So one hand on your belly and the other hand on your chest, and to notice the rising and falling of your hands. And so we're doing two things here. We're bringing you back to the tactile component of that connection, which automatically helps you connect back in. And then once you notice your breath is going to automatically start regulating itself. So once you notice that you're not breathing and you like start to realize, okay, I need to breathe more fully, and you start to fill, your lungs and exhale, and you start to feel the reaction of your body with your hands on your body, you'll start to self-regulate. And so I think a couple of really important pieces here is one, it's really easy to, and we were talking about this before, want to escape, right? To like
Yes.
evacuate.
Hmm.
And something to note here, if you know that you're an anxious person, this technique may not work for you, okay? Because it might make you more anxious. Um, but for most people, it does work. It helps ground them back in. As someone who in the past has disassociated, had panic attacks, techniques that work the best for me are to notice things in my environment. So yes, to note, to ground into my feet, to still do the tactile touch, but to keep my eyes open and to look around me and see what I notice. And that brings me back into the moment. So, there isn't a one technique for everybody because we're all sort of navigating different mental health pieces, different um, things that we're bringing from the past. So I just invite folks to try different techniques and see what feels best for you, and not to stop, like don't give up on your body.
Yeah, and I think the fact is that it's not easy, but it can be so simple. Like it's all at your fingertips. And I agree with you that all of this is a practice. Like I think in our culture we can get so used to like wanting just these big instant results. And it's not
Yeah,
always
yeah.
that way. But if we return to the breath consistently and are like, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be patient. And as you said, whatever method is working, it's such a cliche, but it is like building a muscle, right?
Totally. It's about building our own toolkits. As a holistic wellness practitioner, I'm a Reiki master. I teach yoga, I teach meditation, I've worked with crystals. But my biggest toolkit for me, or my biggest tool for me, has always been mindfulness and expressive movement. And so that's what's continues to keep me anchored in and anchored to the divine. And but each person is going to have their own toolkit. And I'm such a big proponent of build your own toolkit. You are your own healer. You are your own guide. And, yes, we need supports. Yes, we need counselors and therapists, but we also need peer support and our own medicine, and sort of because that's really, you're the only person that's going to know like what your healing journey is about. Um, and so I always encourage folks that I work with, find what resonates for you. And everything that I teach is a tool that people can do on their own, and that they can grow with. I'm not the type of practitioner that says, okay, come see me for a year. No, like let me give you some tools, and go try.
Yeah, off you go.
Go live your life, and put this into practice. Yeah, it's really important that we all develop our own kits.
Absolutely. And I want to just thank you so much for everything that you offered today, because I just feel like there's so much here for people to start putting those kits together. And I'm also really grateful for your like very honest, heartfelt sharing of your awakening. I mean, it's just such a powerful story. If people, everything will be in the show notes, but if people want to hear more from you, work with you, attend a dance temple, what are the best ways for them to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, the best way for people to connect with me is through Instagram, and my handle is at my wise body. I really thank you so much for sharing this time with me. People aren't on Instagram, you can find me at lizdiaz.ca. Those are the best ways to get in touch with me. Yeah, I'm really hopeful that we can all sort of come home to the body. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.
It's perfect. You've said so much. I just want to, I hope that for people listening, if this resonates with you, Liz just offers so much beautiful work in the world. And at the very least, as she said, like turn on your favorite song and just move your body.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if people do want to work with me directly, I have a support group that I'm running. It's called My Wise Body, and it's where we come together as a group, and we learn all of these different techniques of connecting to the body through ritual, through expressive movement, and through mindful embodied awareness. And I also offer one-on-one sessions as well. So lots of ways to connect.
Lots of ways. And I know you were like just kind of had said it was done, but I do want to ask you if it's done, we'll just say we're done. But yeah, if anything, got missed or you have any final words of encouragement or inspiration, I invite you to share them.
Sure. I feel that there's a piece around ritual and reverence for the body. And so let it be a daily practice in the shower when you're taking a shower. Let that be a ritual to your body. When you come to your altar, let there be something at your altar that is a token to your body. When you eat every meal, let that be a reminder of the temple that your soul resides. And I just invite you to continue to honor and to listen and to trust. Mm-hmm.
Liz, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.